Hello and welcome to this Safe Food Advocacy Europe event. My name is Natasha Foote. I am a journalist with Euractiv and I have the pleasure of moderating today's event on the Erasmus Permamodule Project on permaculture. Now, I won't say too much and give the game away because this conference is all about presenting the outcomes and reflections from this project, and also because I'm keen to pass the floor on to our first expert of today's discussion to explain more. But before I do, I'll just say that if you would like to comment on social media, you can do so via the hashtag Perma-Module. There will also be a couple of Q&A sessions throughout this event, so please do keep this in mind and keep your questions coming in throughout the event via the Q&A function that you can find at the bottom of your screen. So just to point out, there is a chat function and a Q&A function. Please do submit all questions via the Q&A function, although feel free to add nice compliments and comments in the chat if you would like to do so. So when giving a question, don't be shy. Please do let us know who is submitting the question. Also, please keep your questions nice and short and concise. And please do say who your question is for so that I can best direct your questions. Now, without further ado, I will pass the floor to Floriana Cimarusti, Safe Food Advocacy Europe, for her opening remarks. So Floriana, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Natasha. Good afternoon to all of you. It's a big pleasure to be with you today, this afternoon. So my name is Floriana Cimarusti. I'm Secretary General at Safe Food Advocacy Europe. We try to protect European consumers during the EU food legislation process. And in addition, we organize several projects on environmental issues. And one of those is this undergraduate university module in permaculture. I'm sorry having the conference just today. It is a very sad day, I think, for everybody starting this war in Europe. I don't want to talk about it. I think we all are sad, but not saying anything would be difficult in such a day. However, although it's a very sad day, we try to, anyway, go ahead and talk about permaculture today. So why permaculture? Why SAFE is working on this sustainable agriculture technique? Actually, was something like 7-8 years old. We had an intern at Safe, and she was talking a lot about permaculture, and we realized how much this is interesting as a sustainable agriculture technique. And then we had the opportunity to receive. We've been awarded an operating grant from the LIFE program, and within the LIFE program, we have inserted 6 days of permaculture open day in different member states. So we organize an open day in Malta, in Italy, in Belgium, in Romania, and Slovenia. And we realized how much people were interested about this technique, how much there was a lot of interest even from consumers to understand what it was, etc. So based on that, what we reflect on is that at university level in the EU, was not enough has been organized, in the sense that in the agricultural university in different EU country, there are no specific module on permaculture. And that's the reason why we have decided to try to be a coordinator, and actually we have been financed by an Erasmus Plus program by the European Commission to create an undergraduate university module in permaculture. So we've been very happy to work with a fantastic professor, great university, people who are really expert in permaculture. By putting us all together, we could create this project, which is actually ready, this module, to be disseminated in many other universities in the EU. So for now, the country that I work on the Perma-Module has been Italy, Malta, Romania, and Belgium, either at sense of university or as Permaculture Institute. So this has been great and successful, and we're happy to have the module ready. And we're really happy to inform you that several other universities signed this memorandum, like Greece, Bulgaria, Croatia, and Romania. So we're trying to expand our project. The module is there. It's ready to be used. And our idea is to have more and more universities who are interested to cooperate with SAFE and all our partners on this project, to have this project bigger and bigger. Because healthy food cannot happen without a healthy environment. And sustainable agriculture is fundamental for the future. We all know that intensive agriculture generally results in high productivity, but at the expense of biodiversity. So permaculture, it is an holistic approach, which is great for the future. And to train and give enough information to students all over the EU is the basic to start in the future to use more and more this technique, which I hope will happen always more and more. Thank you so much. I will not take much more time. I will pass to Natasha. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Floriana, for that overview. I will now pass the floor to Nick Jacobs, who is the Director of IPES Food, for an opening statement on EU agriculture and the Sustainability Challenge. So Nick, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Natasha. Hello, everybody. And thank you to SAFE for inviting me along today to give these opening remarks. If we could put the first slide already, that would be fantastic. And I would like to just point out this picture you're seeing is from a project IPES Food undertook to co-develop a vision for a common food policy for Europe, working with a number of different NGOs and scientists and other stakeholders. And the essence of that project was taking a holistic approach to food systems and saying, if we're going to solve all the challenges in food systems, we need a holistic food policy or food system policy. And today I'm going to be talking about individual sustainability challenges one by one. But the real takeaway message is that all of these challenges are interconnected and we need to find a way to address them together if we're really going to do that effectively. Thank you. So first of all, we have to start with the environmental challenges. The image you're seeing here is the planetary boundaries framework. These are 9 areas, 9 critical Earth systems, where researchers have identified a safe operating space in green in the middle, and anything beyond that puts the planet in danger. And what's very clear is that intensive agriculture is driving the breaches of the planetary boundaries. And if we look at climate change, biosphere integrity, which covers biodiversity loss, land system change, and even the biogeochemical flows, nitrogen, phosphorus, all of this is connected to agricultural practices, particularly the use of extensive chemicals in monocultures, the massive contributions to climate change, notably from livestock, but really from all forms of agriculture, which is considered to contribute now up to 30% of global greenhouse gas emissions. And these problems are driven by agriculture, and they're also affecting agriculture more than any other sector, I think. And they're really a threat to the future productivity of our farming systems. And if we look just in the EU, we're already seeing huge losses of biodiversity. One study in Germany in protected areas saw a 75% loss of insect biomass over a 30-year period. If we look at the soils, 11% of the EU's territory is already affected by moderate to high soil erosion. So these are not problems for the future. They're happening right now. They're driven by agriculture and they're affecting agriculture. If we could move to the next slide, thank you. So as I said at the beginning, the challenge is to see the whole picture. And often we hear, well, you know, there are environmental challenges, but at least we're reducing agricultural emissions in Europe. Now, if we widen the lens and look at the rest of the world, it's crucial to acknowledge that actually we're outsourcing a lot of the environmental impacts of our food systems. Even if we are reducing greenhouse gas emissions in some sectors, more than 30% of the land that's required to meet EU food demand is actually located outside Europe. So that's a huge footprint that we have externally. We import 22 million tons of soya-based animal feed per year, mostly from South America. And if we look at these really harmful trade flows in soy, beef, leather, palm oil, coming from illegal forest clearance, up to a quarter of that is due to exports going into Europe. And we'll often hear, well, you know, there's problems on the land, but we can get more of our food from the seas. We're already having a huge impact and a huge footprint on global maritime resources as well. And less than 50% of the fish and seafood we consume in Europe is actually met by EU demand. So our problems are global problems, the supply chains are connected, and it's very reductive to think just about what's going on in Europe. If we move on, we're often told, well, okay, there are environmental problems, in Europe, around the world, but our food systems are feeding people and they're giving consumers the cheap food that they want and need. And it's worth unpacking that one as well, because in terms of human health and nutrition, the outlook is really problematic as well. And first of all, we have to widen the lens beyond calories and look at the quality of what we're eating. And more than 50% of Europeans are now overweight or obese due to big shifts in their diets, particularly an increase in highly processed foods, widespread micronutrient deficiencies as well. And these unhealthy diets are responsible for nearly half of the burden of cardiovascular disease, which is the leading cause of death in Europe. And then even if we just look at calorie availability and food security in a more narrow sense, there are still 9% of Europeans who are unable to afford a quality meal every second day. So if our justification for the current system is that, well, at least it keeps people fed and gets cheap food, that's not enough. There are a significant number of people who are not getting that food. And the final data point here is just to show that this is not the food system that people want, whether or not it has cheap food. Citizens don't trust the information they're given, and survey after survey shows that people want a better offering of healthy and sustainable food. If we can move on, let's widen the lens again. We were talking about nutrition, food security. If we look at health more broadly, the challenges in our food systems and the impacts are even greater. And it's clear that current practices are fundamentally undermining people's health and exposing them to a number of severe risks. If we look, for example, at ammonia emissions, agriculture contributes to 90% of that in Europe, largely from industrial livestock production. And that in turn contributes to the air pollution that kills 400,000 Europeans per year. Pesticides are in our groundwater, often observed at levels above the quality standards in many member states. This leads to a huge number of health problems, particularly exposure to endocrine disrupting chemicals, which incredibly has been estimated to cost more than 1% of GDP per year in terms of its impacts. I won't go into detail on antimicrobial resistance, but that's another big emerging health risk with huge costs for people and economic costs. Maybe the final line of defense in support of the current system and just tweaking it is that, well, despite all these problems, at least we're making farms competitive and we're increasing productivity, and that's what we need. Let's widen the lens once again. And if we look beyond a handful of very competitive, large-scale export-oriented farms, for much of Europe, the socioeconomic problems in farming are huge. And many farmers are simply being squeezed out of the industry. And if we look at the long-term trend, the share of value going to farmers dropped from around 30% in 1995 down to 24%, recently estimated at nearly 20%. So that's a big change. 1 out of 4 farms disappeared from the landscape over a 10-year period. And even in a wealthier member state like France, we see 30% of farmers with an income that's actually below 1/3 of the minimum wage, as one study showed. And then the final point, just to say that, well, productivity is increasing on some farms, but it can't increase infinitely. And the current systems, as we saw in the first slide, current agricultural systems are driving major planetary disruptions, which are undermining future food production capacity. And that's happening already. And we're seeing in the long-term trends a real plateauing of productivity, and including in some of the most productive areas historically. So where does that leave us? It's clear overall that the problems we have are not just numerous, they are severe, they're interconnected, and they're mutually reinforcing. That final point is really important. And as we've seen, food systems are driving climate change. Climate change is exacerbating all of the different impacts we've talked about. It's reducing the nutrient quantity in foods, which will affect people's health. It's reducing the amount of land that's available for farmers to be able to farm productively. And it is affecting yields themselves, and with big knock-on effects on food security coming down the line. Food systems are also driving poverty, and poverty is one of the factors stopping people from having a healthy diet. Food systems are not providing people with livelihoods that are decent, and I talked about farm incomes before, but of course, food chain incomes and conditions in those in food chain jobs, particularly delivery drivers, processing plants, are also emblematic of a system that drives down costs and does not deliver decent livelihoods. So food systems are really driving these fundamental problems that are exacerbating and locking in so many different negative impacts. And as I've said throughout, these impacts are very clearly linked to a specific industrial intensive food system model based around monocultures, based around requiring chemicals to manage our ecosystems. And so when it comes to thinking about solutions, and we're talking about solutions today in permaculture, the promise of permaculture and regenerative and agroecological solutions is that they address a lot of these different questions together. And there are other solutions out there. If we think about digitalization, many of the tools that are put forward as techno fixes for our food systems, they may stand to improve one of the impacts that we've talked about, but in doing so, they'll be reinforcing the dynamics of this system. They'll be reinforcing the large-scale monoculture production models. They'll be reinforcing the power relations that allow powerful actors to set conditions and set prices in food systems that simply do not allow for sustainability and decent livelihoods and health. And if we could go to the final slide, I'll wrap up. We need to redesign our food systems around different principles, whether we're coming from a basis of agroecology, regenerative agriculture, permaculture, so many different schools. And we hear a lot about the differences between them, but I think the similarities are bigger and more important. And these are all systems, crucially, that take us away from this narrow frame and this narrow focus on net calorie production, yield per hectare, productivity per worker. They're systems that get us thinking about measuring and delivering the things that really matter. So nutrient content per hectare, local calorie and nutrient availability, total outputs per hectare through a diversity of different things that we can produce, and many, many other really crucial indicators of well-being and sustainability. So those are the things we need to be looking for, and that's why I think permaculture is such a promising avenue, and it's so great that we'll be discussing it today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nick, for making that very compelling case for the urgent need to act now to change our food systems. So we'll now hear a short presentation on the Perma-Module Project by Antoine Days. Apologies for the pronunciation, who's the Office and Communications Manager at Safe Food Advocacy Europe. So take it away, Antoine.
Thank you very much, Nick. Thank you very much, Natasha, for the introduction. As you heard, I'm Antoine Days, Office and Communication Manager at SAFE. I have had the pleasure to be coordinating the Perma-Module since it started in September 2019. And without further ado, we'll explain what the project is about. We'll start by looking at a very short video. Lena, you can go to the next slide. And, just the slide after that one, Lena, thank you. And after I'll introduce SAFE. Thank you very much.
Permaculture is a holistic approach to design ecosystems in which human beings are only but one of the many elements that are interconnected. It is a set of principles that integrates land, resources, people, and the environment through mutually beneficial synergies. It aims to recreate natural ecosystems by using closed-loop and no-waste techniques.
Although permaculture has become a widely spread international movement towards sustainability, it has barely been taught in university programs. Universities are regarded as key institutions in the processes of social change and development. Integrating permaculture into higher education is essential to tackle the ever-growing global environmental crisis that our planet is facing.
The Perma-Module project was created by a consortium of universities and permaculture experts to fill in this gap. Together, we provide universities across Europe with tools to implement an undergraduate course in permaculture, including
a detailed undergraduate curriculum to deliver permaculture courses, including practical design knowledge and collaborative teaching methodologies. a student handbook, an interactive and user-friendly learning support for students taking the course, and an e-learning platform allowing easy access to course materials as well as communication among participants.
To implement our course in your university, feel free to visit the learning platform at permamodule.moodlecloud.com.
Thank you, Lena. So if we go back on the first two slides, as you heard, the project is coordinated by SAFE. SAFE is an independent NGO based in Brussels, whose aim is to protect and advance consumer rights in EU food policy. And we do that by strengthening the EU consumer voice in the food sector, running advocacy campaign, and also by raising public awareness and training citizens through projects like this one. Next slide, please. Thank you, Lena. Our membership is constituted of 33 members across 15 EU member states, and these are consumer organizations, vegan and vegetarian associations, health and obesity organizations, and also universities, researchers, and permaculture or sustainable agriculture organizations, such as the ones that are part of this program, which brings us to the next slide. Thank you, Lena. The next slide, who is this project from? It's from 7 partners across 4 EU member states, Malta, Italy, Romania, and Belgium. We have 4 universities in Catania, Liège, Malta, and Bucharest, and 2 permaculture institutes of Romania and Italy. And this lovely group of people is coordinated by SAFE. You can go to the next slide, Lena. Thank you. Why are we doing this project, this 30-month project? We want to develop an undergraduate Perma-Module course in universities, but we will certainly want a collaboration that is very close between higher education, researchers, and professionals. This is beneficial for students as they will develop entrepreneurial skills and be taught about biodiversity knowledge. It's also very interesting for universities to diversify their course catalog. So if we have universities listening to us today, that's for you. And at the end, we also want this module to be recognized internationally. And that's why we've developed it to be as broad and adaptable as possible with 3 intellectual outputs. Next slide. Thank you, Lena. These 3 intellectual outputs have been described in the video, so I will be very fast on them. They're developed in English, Italian, French, and Romanian, and hopefully will be translated in other EU languages very soon. The first one is a course book for teachers, divided in 3 parts, explaining learning outcomes and the knowledge and understanding that we hope students will get out of the course. The second intellectual output on the next slide is a handbook, very interactive, divided in 6 volumes with an addition of a 7th volume, including assignments for students to follow the course. And all of this, the first and second outputs, are available on the 3rd one, which is an interactive learning platform. Lena, you can go to the next slide. Thank you. The platform is on Moodle, permamodule.moodlecloud.com, and you're all invited to check out our outputs there. It's freely accessible. There may be some small technical mistakes sometimes, but it's working fine all the time, I promise. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. The Perma-Module is not only outputs, it's also people. It's a very crucial part of such a project. It's the synergies we build between researchers, professors, lecturers, and practitioners. We do this in different sessions, in different formats, and you will hear about that in this conference. We want consistent scientific exploration of the principles of permaculture. We also, Lena, next slide, thank you. You can go fast on this. we want in this module to experiment design methods in permaculture and apply strategies. That's what students have been doing over the course of this project. And you can go to the next slide, thank you. It's also important to have collaborative and practical field work guided by professionals. And that's what happened in our 4 universities. You can go to the next slide, Lena, thank you. So if you are a university and you're listening to us today, how do you engage with the project? You can contact myself at communications@safefoodadvocacy.eu, and we will discuss signing a memorandum of understanding explaining everything there is to know about the project and the Moodle platform for you to get an access, specific access and download all outputs. If you're shy to engage, know that it has been successfully applied in our 4 universities, and that other universities have already pledged to enter the project. 5 universities in Bulgaria, Croatia, Romania, and Greece, as Floriana mentioned at the beginning, and many more are to come. So to wrap up my presentation, I will go to the next slide. Thank you for a short round of thank yous and thanks to all the teams that are behind this project since its very beginning. The Perma-Module, as I said, it's not only outputs and European fundings, it's people. And the care of people is all the more important at the moment in times of pandemic and war. We have to remember about all these people caring for people, caring for the environment, people in classrooms, students, teachers, lecturers, practitioners of permaculture all around the world, and also, you know, administrators, the administrative staff behind it at SAFE, at the national agency in Belgium that allowed this project to take place. So thank you for all your work, for all the Zoom meetings throughout these 30 months. And that's it for my side. Thank you very much for listening to me. Over to you, Natasha.
Thank you very much, Antoine. I would have loved a module like this in my undergraduate degree. It sounds like a great opportunity for students. So thank you very much for sharing that. And we will now hear from Frances Font Rivera, who is a farmer and CEO of Font Rivera Agricola and the Regen Academy. But before we do, let me just give you all a quick reminder to keep your questions coming through. The more the merrier, because we will have a Q&A session soon. So without further ado, let me pass the floor to you, Frances.
Thank you very much. It's a really pleasure to stay here and talk about my experience, share my experience as a farmer. Actually, I'm a 9th-generation farmer working in Catalonia, and you can please move the slide. This is my family. My family have been working this land over 300 years. So lots of times. We have vineyards, we have olive tree, we have cereals, we have pastures, and we work as a conventional farmers in a conventional way since 7, 8, 9 months ago. And we have a 60 hectares farm. And one day all start with a question. We asked ourselves where did this model is taking us. So in the conventional agriculture, in this moment, we discovered the permaculture, regenerative agriculture, and etc. And next slide, please. So it was the aspect of my it was what my vineyards look like 7 or 8 months ago. Conventional agriculture, lots of pesticides, tilling the soils every month or every 2 weeks, I don't know. And next slide, please. And we start try to understanding the soil. We started testing the soil. We started understanding that the microorganisms are important, the organic matter are important, the mineral balance are important, because we learn at the university about pesticides and pests and etc. disease, but not about the soil, not about the organic matter, not about the microorganisms. So we start to understand what happened on the soil, and we start to analyze. Testing the soil is important. And please, next. And we start to improve our soils. We started to make our own products with microorganisms, working with my family, because there are not a dangerous products. We use milk, we use soil, we use plants. So we start to improve really fastly our soil with this kind of products that we learn in different courses of permaculture, of regenerative agriculture around the world. And next, please. And we start to cover our soils, because for us this is the case. This is a young vineyard, less than 1 year, and actually when we plant the vineyard, we start to sow the cover crops here, different plants, to improve fastly the soil, to protect the soil. And for me, this is okay, to find the balance between the cover crops and the main crops, because it's important to have a good main crops to win money. But to find the balance is the key. And when you find the balance, all is flowering and all it works. So now, next, please. We are learning how to manage these cover crops to create a mulching, natural mulching. So on summer, our vineyards, our olive tree, or all of our crops have this aspect. So we don't till now the soil. We don't use chemical products, because we every year need less and less chemical products, because of the pests and disease are normally under control, because the biosystem, the biodiversity, and we manage the cover crops with animals. Please, next. Using, for example, sheep in our vineyards, using pigs in our almond trees, in our olive trees, using horses, using cows in our olive trees as well. Chicken tractors moving around the fields to take care of the cover crops and the main crops. And in the end, the result is that you can see now in the next and the last slide, please. So this is the result. So we are improving our soils a lot. In only 3 years, we are increasing about 3% of organic matter. We are capturing about 10 tons of carbon each year for each hectare in our farm. And in the end, our farm now is more profitable. For me as a farmer, this is the key of permaculture, and in this case, regenerative agriculture. So thank you to listen to me. This is my experience.
Thank you so much, Francis, for sharing your experience, for sharing those photos as well from your land. It was really interesting to see your history of your land and everything that you're doing there. So thank you very much. We're now going to hear all about the potential of permaculture education in the transition to regenerative agriculture from Ionut Badica, who's the president of the Permaculture Research Institute of Romania. But before we do, I will remind you again to keep your questions coming in, because we will have a Q&A session right after we hear from Ionut. So Ionut, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Ionut here. So I consider myself one of the pioneers of permaculture in Romania. I'm also the president of the Permaculture Research Institute, and I also have this hat of the founder of the biggest urban community gardens in Romania, also the founder of the Social Support Permanent Center for Regenerative Agriculture. I'm saying this because I also switched to this hats a little bit. So if you click the next slide. So a bit of what is permaculture, and also we'll go to what permaculture education is. I'm showing this that it not only the definition, which most of us know that it's a set of principles that integrates land, resources, people, environment. It aims to imitate and recreate natural ecosystem, and that's very important because what permaculture is all about. It's about imitating nature, and I think that's one important thing that it's also attractive at permaculture. People are attracted of solutions that are nature based. But also permaculture, it's a movement. And this image on the left is from our case studies in this Perma-Module. So look for our research and our papers in the Permaculture Module website. It's an international and regional movement, and that it's growing. I think only in Romania we have thousands of people that are practicing, and they are becoming more and more skillful on projects. And then it's also a design system, and it has his own way of creating. It brings new methodology on how to create and how to design, and has his permaculture has his best practice and framework of design. So if we switch to the next slide, this is also something nice, that if you look at the permaculture publication, we don't have that many publications about permaculture, which is very curious. Hopefully, from now we'll have more and more researchers that are in this field. You look that there are some buzzwords and some connection between them. It's all about the design. It's about food. It's also about community, sustainability, a community again, and farm agriculture. So this is the big domain where permaculture is contributing. What about the transition? Because my presentation is about the transition. So if we go to the next slide, we are very happy. I personally am very happy, but also a little bit scared now that if we think that last year the discussion about sustainability or the transition beyond sustainability was a concern and a topic to discuss by ecologists, activists, social society, science people, also permaculture community. Now we have the Green New Deal. The European Commission launched the Green New Deal is a political declaration, and it has a clear invitation to action. And yes, we have a common crystallized target for our agricultural system in Europe, and I think it's not only the agriculture system. I think it's the whole economics of Europe will rearrange with these targets, and they are super bold. I mean, just thinking about that, in 8 years we want to reduce greenhouse gas emission by 50%, or increase area farm organically to 25%, or reduce chemical plant protection products by 50%, reduce nutrient losses by 50%, reduce chemical fertilizer by 20%, reduce 50% of antimicrobial products using farm animal, and 10% of the farmland will be removed to production to biodiversity. And yeah, are these numbers too bold? I don't know. For me, I also want to celebrate them, because we have something to look like, and we have an agreement, a political agreement. And myself as a permaculturist, I was waiting for that, and we have it. So now it's time to take action, and for that, let's not forget let's not forget, and let's include people that are already walking on that journey. So how about the permaculture community? How can contribute to reach this target? And if we look at the law of diffusion of innovation or adoption theory, I think the permaculture community is there in the innovators and early adopter group, because yeah, they are the first one who will adopt these kind of strategies. That also in the permaculture community, there are a lot of people that know about regenerative practice, and they are also not knowing intellectually. They are doing projects. They are innovators that created business already. Some of them are super financial sustainable, some of them are not, but anyway, they are doing research, and they are doing creating frameworks and best practice. They are well motivated people, driven by ethics, and like I said, they already taking action. So yeah, this might be a message for decision makers that let's look for into permaculture community to see who's there that already are doing actions, doing projects. What about permaculture education? And we have some distinction about permaculture education, and in comparing with classical, I don't know if that's a good word, classical education in university. I think that permaculture is all about practice. In if who those green, yeah, someone said something, but I will answer later. It's all about practice. The basic approach for permaculture education is do a permaculture design course, which is 2 weeks course. Now we have permaculture education in university, but yet it's developing slowly. But it's nice that permaculture has its own set of education. It's all about the ethics. We want to cultivate students not only with intellectual information. We want to cultivate students also with the worldview, speaking and understanding, and that embodying what does it mean climate change. And through permaculture education, we can do that. And permaculture education is result oriented. We are doing stuff. We want to have results. It's holistic and is multidisciplinary. It's good, but sometimes it's become too complex because we touch biology, geography, soil, also social science, and because of that, you need to have all these tools in your backpack of a permaculture teacher and permaculture practitioner. Yes, how we see the transition in next slides. Next slide is with only 8 seasons. That's important to until 2030. I think we won't be only doable with money. Even European Commission will invest money in education, but also giving to farmers. I think we will need to start. First, we start with education and do some collaborative research. Includes farmers and students and teachers. And I think we'll have to look for those people that are doing innovation and to identify them and see what are the best practice. And also for each sector and each scale to see what's the business model and the production model. For example, in Romania, we're elaborating the business and production model for vegetable production in regenerative organic way for human scale, 0.5 to 4 hectares. But also we need this kind of models for medium scales, 5 to 10, broad scales, 10,000 hectares. We have, because right now, I don't think we have enough information on how to do it. And in 8 seasons, we'll spend at least 3-4 doing research and education. So let's hurry up the pace. Let's invest in education. Let's grow farmers, and we'll have the results. I don't think we should hurry up. Let's take the rhythm to invest in education, and then we'll see the results. So what about our case study at the farm? We are a small farm, focusing on vegetable production as a start, aiming to integrate forestry, animal, and broad-scale agriculture. We are producing vegetables and researching the model. Yes, we need financial sustainability, and we earn money from vegetable production, but we'll cross to forestry and animal. We have, like I said, we have human scale, 3 employees, produce year-round. I want to define that because we have, like in all the Europe, the working force is a problem. So our model is based on few employees. And our target group for education is farmers from Europe and Romania, future or current market gardeners and regenerative organic practitioners. And we aim to research and develop this regenerative organic business and production model for our scale. And what we've done so far, we've done 38 technological sheets for vegetable, 38 crops. We measure everything on minutes, how many hours, minutes spent on every operation, in order to see what are the timesheets, what are the cost benefits, what are all the operation manual for all the production activities. And also we've done the book of our farm, like the investment costs and all the budget. I can show you some numbers. So we need to include more research on this part. That is the biggest pie. It's harvesting. Go more efficient there. Go more on the orange one, which is conditioning vegetables. Do more research on that in order to have more profitability. Because if it's not profitable, and even if it's building soil and it's not profitable, it won't replicate. So this will be some of the area that we want to invest more into research to go into profitability and to scale up the model. Another result is how look the workload. So when to hire people by week. So we found this one, and the next one is what are the best crops to grow. We have others results from the farm, but maybe next time. What we see from the field, from our perspective, I think we need to have researchers into farms. We'll be very helpful to have a paid position to doing only research. We're farmers, but we're doing also research. It's super hardcore. I think we'll need regional and extension office and officers to spread the knowledge. Also, what's a problem for us is that we don't have tax reduction for education programs in internship apprenticeships. We pay our interns tax. We pay the taxes as an employee, and I don't think that's fair. And yeah, financial support for innovation, farm incubators, and of course regional and experimental and demonstrative farm education on every bioregion. This is what we're seeing from the field. We're lacking this, and if we won't have it. I don't think the regenerative practice will scale up. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ionut, for that presentation. I really liked what you said when you said, let's invest in education, let's grow farmers. I like the idea of growing farmers. So thank you very much for that. So we're now going to move to our first Q&A session of this event. So just a reminder to keep your questions coming in if you do have more questions throughout. But let me start with a question. I have a question here for Nick. So Nick, the question here for you is that you talked about possible transition pathways to sustainability. Reflecting on the word transition, what do you think will be a likely time frame for the EU to become sustainable and achieve the SDGs, so the Sustainable Development Goals, by 2030? What kind of time frame are we talking about here? It's a big question for you, but maybe you could comment on that, Nick.
Thanks. That's a really difficult question. I think we're way off course to achieve as a planet to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030, and I think COVID-19 has sort of thrown the world even further off course. I think if we're just looking from an EU perspective, we're always, I think, limited or kind of focused on the time frame for reforming the Common Agricultural Policy. So the next time that comes around, I think we're looking at 2027. I think that will at least be a date when we'll know if we're on the right track or not, and if things are really changing. On a more, if we imagine a more positive scenario between now and then, the farm to fork strategy is strengthened, it will be implemented and will be more ambitious than it was to start with. And by virtue of having this strong farm to fork strategy and these overarching objectives for the food system, then we will have to see some change in EU agricultural policy at the latest by the time of the next CAP reforms, if not before, as a kind of midterm adjustment, or at the member state level in the national CAP programs. So yeah, I think 2027 is maybe a date by which we'll know a bit more about how serious the EU is about really changing course and moving towards sustainable modes of agriculture. And yeah, but there's, I imagined a positive pathway there, but it's also very possible that we get to 2027 and we think we've made progress in how these questions are being discussed, and then we have a common agricultural policy that is not fundamentally reformed, that keeps paying farmers per hectare without really doing enough to encourage transition, redesign of their practices. Yeah, I'll stop there.
So keep 2027 in mind, time for a rain check then. I have a question here. It's actually directed at Francis, but I think I might throw it out there to actually maybe all of our panelists to hear their take on it. But I'll go to Francis first. So the question here is, how can permaculture, regenerative agriculture, or agroecology and the like be best upscaled? How can alternative agricultural practices be anchored in EU agricultural policy? I know Nick touched upon that just now, but Francis, I'll come to you first on that one about upscaling and anchoring in policy. Is Francis there?
But no? If anyone likes to answer.
Perhaps not. Okay, no problem. Perhaps I'll come first to Ionut on that one then. Ionut, you have to unmute yourself. I think you're muted. Still muted.
Yes.
There we go.
I'm on. I think I somehow am answering to my presentation. It will be hard to reach the numbers. Even if the numbers are not quite the target, there were just some numbers in it's a paper yet. I think yes, education, and we need models. and we need to clarify how to reach sustainable financial sustainability of the farmers. So let's support the farmers, those farmers to reach sustainable financial and also to regenerate soil. And we should start with someone, not with all of them. Let's first identify best practice. Let's first identify farmers, and then we'll scale up. And yeah, take it slowly. It's not gonna happen in 8 years. It's not gonna happen in 20 years. It'll be slowly. And it's about our culture, not only agriculture. So slowly.
And I'll throw the same question to Nick. So how can permaculture and the like be best upscaled, and how can alternative agricultural practices be anchored in EU agricultural policy?
First of all, I agree with Jonut that this will take time, and we have to allow time for farmers to spread this knowledge and not try to impose it top down. If we think about policy levers that can support this change, the obvious place to look is the Common Agricultural Policy, and particularly Pillar 2 on rural development. And hopefully we can see changes there that could be really impactful, but politically it's difficult to imagine right now. But I think maybe just as big an opportunity can come from like the consumer side and from policies relating to health. The impacts I talked about in my presentation, the impacts of industrial agriculture on human health are huge, and people are aware of them, and they want a different food system. So if we have policies, if we have really a strong farm to fork strategy that's driven by those health concerns and environmental concerns as much as by agricultural economic concerns, then surely we will have a system where farmers are encouraged to transition away from that model. And so, that public policy combined with a clear sign that consumer demand is changing, that people want different things from their food systems. They're saying it already, but if we hear that with increasing clarity, then I think that will give farmers that additional belief that this is the direction they have to go in.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure if Francis is on the line. Francis? Perhaps he's not. That's okay. We will just go to another question. I have one here for Janut, another question. The question is, based on your experience at the Institute, what is the cost-benefit correlation for SMEs, specifically SMEs, to engage in regenerative agricultural practices? Do you believe the correlation changes when it comes to bigger enterprises? So talking specifically about the size here. Perhaps you could comment on that, Janut.
Okay, I'm not on mute. We're still researching on it. Our intuition and our numbers now are saying that we're quite there on reaching the numbers. So I think it's a quite simple. It would be very simple if when we have like the paper of the farm to spread it out to other farmers, and won't be a problem to scale up and do some maybe scale up to a network of farmers. I believe that in the future, from our model, we'll see maybe a network of farmers, also big scale, because the research that we've done, it's also attacking not only small scale, human scale, it's also attacking the big scale. Yes, if I'm understanding correctly the question.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I actually have a question here for Antoine. It's quite specifically about the module. So there are two questions here. The first one is, what does the permaculture educator have to do in order to be able to teach this module? Perhaps you could talk a little bit about that. And also, what is the pathway for local or regional permaculture educators to propose the Perma-Module to their local academic bodies? What would the university departments that might be interested, which university departments might be interested apart from the obvious ones, such as agronomy? So there's some quite specific questions there for you, Antoine, if you're able to answer those.
Thank you. I'll try to answer as best as I can. We've designed this module to be accessible to the widest audience possible. The idea is that we do not limit ourselves to students of agronomy or horticulture or agriculture, that the module is fully accessible for everybody, but then we're leaving a lot of freedom to educators and professors. So as described in my presentation, the first intellectual output, the teacher's coursebook, is a body of knowledge with a lot of different chapters that teachers can pick from to design their lessons. And we have obviously a lot of examples there for them to get inspiration. So they're not obliged to follow the whole guide, but we're suggesting pathways, we're suggesting solutions to create a course. Then they can design it based on the audience they'd like to have. So it starts from the educator to the students, but then students are also, it's the permaculture mindset to do that. They're also welcome to bring in their own ideas while they perform design exercises. So I think that answers part of the question. Then what can you do as an educator to reach out to your university? Then you can maybe send an email and present the project. We've already reached out to 137 universities. Perhaps they will very soon develop one of these Perma-modules in their universities, and they will contact you. If you have suggestions of ideas of university, you can always reach out to me, and I'll try my best to put you in contact with your regional university and see what we can do from there. I think there was one additional question that I forgot about, Natasha.
No, I think it was, what does the permaculture educator have to do in order to teach this module? I think you kind of touched upon that, but maybe you can expand a little bit on that.
Well, I think, yeah, I already talked about that. It depends how the university departments, obviously with such a diverse audience of universities, we have different systems, different countries, different cultures, and they would work in a different way. So it would depend on your regional or national background, but it would depend on what they frame for this class, and then what you can input there. What I think in the second half of this conference, we'll hear a lot about the experiences at the Liège University and Bucharest University, and also talk from Chen Su, who's going to talk about the role of teachers, of universities in bridging the gap between the permaculture movements and universities. You'll see what we can do there. I think this question will be better answered in the second half of the conference, really.
Okay, so for whoever asked that question, make sure that they hang on for the second half of this conference. I have a couple of other questions here we have time for. There is one question for Janut here. Someone would like to know that the partners of the project are seem to be mostly based in Central, Southern Europe. Do you have some practical examples from Northern countries as well? That's for Janut.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. I think the most known example is Richdale Permaculture Project, developed by Richard Perkins in Sweden. He's quite one of the innovators and one of the pioneers of the movement globally. He is doing in Sweden, so if he's doing in Sweden, it can be done anywhere. So yeah, check Richard Perkins' work.
Okay, great. Thank you for that one. We have, I think, maybe time for another couple of questions. I have a question here. It's a bit wider than just than agricultural systems, but the question is about people's mentality. So how important is the mentality, maybe in the traditions of people in the process of understanding and applying the principles and ethics of permaculture? So kind of more of an ethical question there. And is it possible to speak about aligning people's thinking for a better organization Or is human biodiversity also useful? I mean, that's an interesting kind of philosophical question there. The question's put to either Nick or Janut. Maybe I'll come to Nick for his comments on that first.
Yeah, I'm not sure about changing culture, but certainly a change of values, and you know, the two things are not so far apart. In my presentation, I talked about, you know, a fundamentally different set of principles are needed for the kind of food systems that would respect the planetary boundaries and deliver sustainability. And yeah, that extends to values as well, because all of this is underpinned by people's expectation of a food system that delivers high quantities of cheap food at all times. It's a food system where we're distanced. Most consumers are very distanced from food production on so many levels. And if we want a real change, if we want a fundamental shift in the way we produce food, then that does on some level require people to change those values and change those expectations.
Thank you very much for that. And I'll put the same question to Janut. That will be our last question today. So a comment on that, perhaps, Janut.
So all of us, we are consumers. So I will start it from there, looking at what's our consume decision making, what's behind our why we're consuming and how we're consuming. I will start from that. So we also have a discussion with our clients on how much they should pay the farmer. So it's a big topic. We need to speak more about ethics. We need to speak more about values. We need to speak more about the people that are producing food, and they are producing not only services that goes beyond vegetable production, for example, that they are doing ecosystem services, but they are earning. We as farmers, we are not earning money. I mean, we are earning. We are there at minimum wage, let's say, but we are doing also ecosystem service. So it's about discussion. Let's invest energy into communication about ethics. Just let's speak about it, because we don't speak, we just do. We're a civilization of doing stuff without looking back on our results.
Very wise words to finish our first half of the event today. So we're now going to take a short break until 3:25, but do come back afterwards, because we have a very interesting and full session for our second half of the event. So go and get yourself a coffee or a cup of tea if you're like me, and I will see you back here at 3:25. Hello and welcome back to this Safe Food Advocacy Europe event on the Erasmus Perma-Module Project on permaculture. So we have a whole host of speakers lined up for the second half. So let's get stuck straight in with a talk on permaculture alignment with the SDGs, that's the Sustainable Development Goals, with Professor Paolo Guanaccia, I probably pronounced that incorrectly, my apologies, and Ezio Gori, who's a certified permaculture trainer at the University of Catania. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank SAFE for the organization of this webinar, but above all for the coordination and management of the Perma-Module project. It was very good experience for our university. And then I would like to thank also the Italian Academy of Permaculture that introduced us to SAFE and to the consortium of the Perma-Module project. So I will just introduce Ezio Gori, that will continue this presentation, talking about the course we hold in the University of Catania. Please, Lena, can you change? Okay. So the course was organizing with the teaching material provided by the Perma-Module project, and we involved several colleagues of mine and my colleague Professor Branca, with whom I managed the project, and it was very interesting how the holistic approach of permaculture fitted very well with the specialistic approach of my colleagues, and this was, I think, there was a moment of important synergic collaboration between the world of the permaculture and the world of the academy. And I think the university gained the experience of the permaculture world in terms of systemic approach, and permaculture activities, good practices could use the result of the research in order to establish a sustainable and more sustainable agriculture and agri-food system in the world. So in the framework of this collaboration with Ezio Gori and other permaculture experts, we wrote an article that was published in the journal Agronomy, whose title was "The Proposal of a Bioregional Strategic Framework for a Sustainable Food System in Sicily," where we used the permaculture method of design and the permaculture approach to develop this sustainable food system in Sicily. Please, Lena. As I told, the theme that emerged was that while permaculture provided a whole system design thinking approach, and there was the academic lesson that provided the specialist niche input, and this is contributing towards the development of students with generalist and some specialist skill, thereby enhancing career prospects as agile project leaders with T-shaped generalist and specialist skill set. So this was our, I think, most important output of this experience. This experience of the course at the University of Catania, with the important result we obtained, allow us to organize another course this year in the second semester, again for the student of all the degree course of the University of Catania. The idea, the final idea, is that this experience will create the opportunity to organize an advanced Perma-Module course. Is like a one-year master course for the next year. So now I introduce Ezio Gori to continue the presentation.
Thank you, Paolo. If you can go to the next slide. So with reference to the paper from agronomy that Paolo mentioned, I'm diving right in, and we started exploring what are the challenges that are facing agriculture in Sicily. And in a nutshell, you can see just from the images, the shade cloth areas and these pretty barren landscapes, that industrial agriculture actually induces monocultures. It's reliant on external inputs. It degrades the environment and causes a loss of biodiversity. And then this wonderful food map that shows Sicily exporting all these wonderful citrus. So what happens is that the top crops are exported whilst the basic food commodities are imported. And all that's been done through the global food-based economy is that they are transporting water, flavored water. That's all it is. And then if you look at the cultural landscapes that have been abandoned in place of modernity and with a consequential loss of institutional memory, these are tragic consequences. But perhaps the worst one is the ongoing desertification. So the little sketch in the center there is from Victor Schauberger. And he was a naturalist. He studied nature and he was a forester. And he figured out that as soon as you start denuding the terrain of biomass and start reducing the humus in the soil, the surface temperature becomes hotter than the raindrops that fall into it. And as a consequence, the rainwater doesn't penetrate into the soil, it bounces off, and with it, it takes even more topsoil. So this leads to the half hydrological cycle and ongoing desertification. It's almost like a downward spiral. If we go to the next slide. Next slide, please. Let's look at the opportunities on the other hand. No, one up, one slide back. Lena, if you can go one slide back. That's it. It's quite simple to restore these landscapes, you know, just by putting in. No, move on one slide, please. Yeah, stay there. Just by putting swales across the landscape, pretty much on contour or leading to small catchment areas, one can start slowing down the water, spreading it and sinking it. And that's how you recharge the aquifers. A water plume below a swale can support a forest strip. So now we start creating microclimates and across the wide sections of terrain. And then the other relatively easy thing to repair is if we have eroded landscapes with deep gullies. Effectively, these gullies have dropped the water courses, and with that, the water table in the soil has dropped. To repair this is quite simple. You fill up the gully and you use local materials, rock walls, gabion baskets, and so forth. And what that does, that raises the water table. So now the roots can actually reach the water. And the consequences of this is that we start restoring the hydrological cycle. So what happens? We have more biomass, we have more humus in the soil. And with that, the surface temperature is on the soil is cooler than the raindrops. So now the rainfall can actually penetrate the soil. And what happens in the soil is quite amazing. This new rainfall that penetrates the soil squeezes out the older water in the soil that brings up minerals and vitamins, or not vitamins, but the minerals from the soil through the roots, through the evapotranspiration. And now we've got mineral-rich rainfall across the wide swaths of the terrain. If we go to the next slide. If we start embracing limited till technologies, where we no longer plow and turn the soil upside down, this also can improve the humus in the soil and also holistic management. And the consequences of this, if we look at the carbon sequestration, this is perhaps the most important slide of the presentation, or the take-home numbers here. If we look at the work that was done by Dr. Christine Jones, where she estimated that soil with up to 4% humus, and that's what you find in a pristine forest, 4 or 5%, not more than that in the soil, and only at 1% of humus in the soil, it can retain 144 kiloliters of water per hectare, and it can sequestrate 132 tons per hectare. And at 4%, it quadruples. So humus in the soil retains moisture and also it sequestrates carbon. Now let's extrapolate these numbers for the Italian context. I did a similar exercise several years ago for the South African context, and Dr. Christine Jones actually validated the calculations. I was quite happy with that. And this time I used the same approach. So if we look at Italy, Italy emits up to about 2 years ago, I got this figure, 358,000 kilotons of CO2. It has 6.6 million hectares of arable land. So at 1% humus, and remember that industrial agriculture are lucky to have a fraction of 1% humus in the soil. So at 1% humus in the soil across the 6.6 million hectares of arable land in Italy, it can sequestrate 871 tons of CO2. And that means that only 41% of the arable land in Italy at 1% humus can sequestrate the entire CO2 budget. Or on the other extreme, lower down in the table, 10% of the arable land in Italy, basically 600,000 hectares, at 4% humus can do the same job. If we focus on Sicily, that's got 1.5 million hectares of arable land, which is about 23% of Italy's entire arable land. If we get to 2% humus in Sicily, it can sequestrate Italy's entire CO2 budget. So arguably, farmers are capable of single-handedly saving the planet. And the Italian farmers have the potential to sequestrate in Italy's entire CO2 emissions. This is a major game changer. If we go to the next slide. Okay, Lena, you're going a bit fast, but leave it there where it is right now. So we've got to a stage where how do we definitely point in the right direction towards regenerative practices? So we have to formulate a rationale. And with the rationale, we looked at scenario planning. So on the one vertical axis, we've got regenerative agriculture. This restores environmental resilience and stimulates the local socio-economy. And on the other extreme, we have industrial agriculture, which causes environmental degradation, and it's reliant on global agribusiness, as we saw in the challenges and opportunities. If we now juxtapose these two extremes, with a proactive stakeholder response and a reactive, we start developing 4 interesting scenarios. So if we have proactive stakeholders that really embrace regenerative agriculture, we can have a flourishing agricultural sector. On the other extreme, if we have very poor leadership, reactive in nature, that are hell-bent on industrial agriculture, we're literally heading towards environmental destruction, loss of biodiversity, political instability, and so forth, and a famine. And if we have proactive stakeholders embracing industrial agriculture, these guys are gung-ho, they're really resource intensive, high level of capital resources. It leads to fruitless and wasteful expenditure, a faster degradation of the environment, fosters climate change, and it's a very wasteful environment. On the other hand, even if some reactive stakeholders embrace regenerative agriculture, at least they become lean and mean. It's a frugal scenario or environment where there's a lot of innovation. It's slow but steady impact on the agricultural sector. And don't go forward with the slide, Lena. If you just show the rest of the slide, that's it. So you can see that we have to head in the direction of abundance. And the question we need to ask, if we cannot imagine a positive future, how can we move towards it? So scenario planning is designed to exactly drive us and point us in the right direction. So will stakeholders be fearful to change and be responsible for a collapsing environment and socioeconomic welfare, or will stakeholders have the courage to change and regenerate agriculture to create resilience? Remember the 2 key words here, courage versus fear. Let's go to the next slide. So now we start putting together our strategic framework. And for inspiration, we looked at alignment with the Sdgs and the Stockholm Resilience Center. They produced this diagram of, it's called the SDG food cake. And we also looked at Rete Rurale Nazionale in Italy, IPS food, and with these sources of inspiration to see what are they saying about sustainable food systems, we started putting together the strategic approach, which is the why and the what of what we're doing. So the why is we formulated this strategic framework in order to give birth to a potential bioregional development program for a sustainable food system in Italy. So this part of the strategic framework includes a mission, values, and overarching objectives. If you can show the rest of the slide, Lena. Okay, stop there. Now we bring in the permaculture ethics, and we can see how we've embedded them and aligned them with the SDG food cake from the Stockholm Resilience Center. So earth care is basically the biosphere, people care is society, and fair share is the economics. So if we read the mission statement, to restore cultural landscapes through regenerative agriculture so as to strengthen food security and enhance nutritional well-being. That hits home people care and society. Establish resilient socioeconomic communities. That's alignment with fair share and economics. And then moderate climate change on a bioregional scale, and that's earth care and the biosphere. Expanding the mission now onto the overarching objectives, you can see how we've aligned with the food cake again in terms of these categories: economic, society, and biosphere. Show the rest of the slide, please, Lena. But we felt there was something missing in the strategic approach. You know, the challenges in Sicily are quite extreme, one could say. There's an agro-mafia, which takes its cut from all the farmers, well, not all the farmers, but a substantial portion of them. On the other hand, there's good people that are taking back land and confiscating land from the agro-mafia and relocating it to other farmers. So we try to put in there some form of values that can encourage people to move in the right direction through this strategic framework. And here we looked at the work of David Hawkins in his book, Power versus Force. So David Hawkins developed the map of consciousness, and on a scale of 0 to 1,000, where at 1,000 points, it's basically the consciousness of a Christ or a Buddha. And if you can see the scale at about 200, the word courage starts flickering up. So above 200, one is within one's power, and below 200, everything is forceful. If you look at pride, it sits at the highest emotional or consciousness level below 200, and that's where most politicians are stuck at. They don't have the courage to face the mistakes they've made. So we try to pitch the values above 200. So focus on the words courage, neutrality, willingness, acceptance, reason. And this is how we formulated the values to give this positive impulse in Sicily for the strategic framework. So to have the courage to support lifestyles within bioregional carrying capacity, to trust stakeholders to act fairly in the interests of the bioregional economy, to be willing to restore the bioregional environment as a foundation for positive change, to forgive past injustices and accept the present urgency to establish resilient communities, to understand the reasoning for protecting life on land and life below water, and to revere the love for one's health, well-being, home, community, and bioregion.
Thank you, Ezio. I will ask you just to wrap up your last point there, because we're a little bit over time. Thank you.
All right, let's move on then. So this shows the alignment of the overarching objectives across the SDGs. It ticks many, many boxes. If you go to the next slide, now we start putting together the whole strategic framework. You can put the whole slide together. So we have the strategic approach, the why and the what, and the how and the when is the methodology. So it's got 4 key components as the 4 drivers. It's permaculture-inspired education as the lead sector, permaculture-based development programs and indicators, and it's got a show the rest of the slide. We call it the 100-3-2-100 plan for 2030, which means 100% of the stakeholders on board at 3 universities teaching a bioregional design program, 2% organic carbon in the soil, and 100% of carbon investment. This is the plan in 2030. Next slide, final slide. Yeah, we start putting it all together. You can see the mission is aligned with the SDGs and permaculture ethics. and the 4 critical success factors where governance and management is fully aligned with SDGs, lead component of education aligned with Gaia Education, which pretty much teaches the SDGs, development programs aligned with natural capital, and the monitoring, evaluation, reporting, again, aligned with governance, economy, biosphere, and society. And what we're trying to do is transform landscapes to generate better quality food using permaculture principles. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. There were some really impressive numbers that you were citing from Italy. I'm sure we can dig a little bit deeper with some questions in the Q&A there, which is a nice segue into a reminder to keep your questions coming, because we do have a Q&A at the end of today's session. So we will now hear from Dr. Senzu Caruana, who's a lecturer at the Center for Environmental Education and Research at the University of Malta, all about bridging the gap between permaculture and universities. So the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot. And I would like, first of all, to thank the Perma-Module Consortium for this great opportunity. As you can see, I will be giving more the perspective from a university, but also on a personal level, I have been interested in permaculture for a number of years. So in a way, I have a bit of insights coming from both the permaculture world as well as the university world. And actually, this whole project was about bridging the gap between the permaculture world and the university world, who sometimes were too much, if you want, moving in parallel. So we tried to find a way where they could get closer together and move forward together. Next slide. Of course, Ezio has just spoken in depth about the Sustainable Development Goals, but we all know that the Sustainable Development Goals, in a way, are the challenges that we are facing. Governments have decided that this is what we will be emphasizing till 2030, the 2030 agenda. So from a university point of view, the main question to ask is, are our curricula anachronistic, or are our curricula up to date? And do they respond to the SDGs? Do they respond to the challenges of our decade, environmental challenges, poverty challenges, and so on? So most universities have started this process of revising their curricula to see to what extent these curricula target different SDGs. Next slide, please. This has already been, in a way, outlined by others also in yesterday's talk, but basically permaculture is remarkable in a way because it supports all of the 17 SDGs and also directly contributes to at least 13 of them. I will not stop on this slide because it has already been explained previously, so perhaps we can move to the next one. And actually, one of the interesting questions that was put in the Q&A of before the break was actually about the need to change mindsets. And actually, in my university, for example, we are teaching this Perma-Module not through a science faculty, not through an agriculture faculty, but actually through an educational institution. Because at the end, permaculture is about knowledge, of course. It is about awareness, of course, but it also sits very comfortably within the educational framework, which is more about values, attitudes, and behaviors. And basically, we try to contextualize our courses within a particular understanding that we cannot solve the problems, the challenges that the SDGs point us towards. We cannot solve them from the same mindset, from the same level of consciousness that created them. So basically, if the dominant paradigm today is, for example, that we give a low value to nature, we keep our compassion for those closest, we accept risk to create wealth, we think in a way as if there are no limits to growth, we present our society as okay, just a need of a bit of tinkering with the system, and to accept this very divisive left, right-wing politics. But this is the same mindset that is at the root of the challenges that we face. So we explore emerging paradigms, which are more about a high value of nature, more general compassion, risk minimized through foresight, through design, through planning, an understanding that we are one world, that there are limits to growth, the understanding that we need to transform society and a new politics. And we feel that permaculture fits perfectly within this emerging paradigm. So if one of the roles of a university is to help us move away from the dominant paradigm towards the emerging paradigm, to be more relevant for the challenges that we face today, then permaculture is an asset. Next slide, please. So we tried in this project to understand where do the different participants of this project come from. So for example, we know that sometimes the learning of permaculture requires higher academic standing, more recognition, sometimes also the need and the ability to apply for projects directly through their name. So basically, it is vital for the success of these cutting-edge projects, their ability or their need to scale up. So we know that permaculture practitioners are taking huge risks to create change. They are researchers in their own way. They might not follow the rigid structures of university, but they are researchers who look at the old paradigm and who discover and learn new ways, and they are helping us move towards this more holistic framework. So one of the questions that we asked in this project is, what does permaculture stand to gain through better links with universities? Next slide. And then conversely, universities traditionally have long been understood as agents of change, as catalysts for political action, for social action. And in reality, most of the world leaders, most of the decision makers, most teachers are actually educated by universities. Most major employers are educated by universities. So this is really about the need for universities to integrate the concepts of sustainability in all of their teaching. And basically, it is about transforming universities. So the opposite side of the previous question is, what do universities stand to gain through better links with the permaculture communities? Next slide. So basically, even in my university, we have a very strong process going on, which is about greening our university. And then we have a separate process about making the Faculty of Education more sustainable. But we also know that many times we suffer. We aim high, but we find it hard because universities are big structures, big bureaucracies, and sometimes change is slow. And similarly, when we look at permaculture, we understand the potential of permaculture in developing productive landscape systems, for example. And the potential of this development of productive landscape systems to address economic, social, and environmental bottom lines of sustainability, a bit also like Ionit tries to explain in his presentation. In fact, for example, in my university, we have a rural premises in Fawara, and we are actually developing the land that belongs to university, which is part of this rural premises, according to permaculture principles, because we understand the need to preserve and enhance campus diversity and also the ecosystem services of the grounds, of the greenery that exists in our campuses. Next slide. So basically, a quick look at the future. One of a few conclusions that we can draw from this project. Basically, there is a need to bridge the gap between universities and practitioners, in particular permaculture practitioners. There is a need for universities to recognize farmers as researchers, to recognize farmers as important co-researchers. There is a need for more spaces like this PermaPlus project that bring together different stakeholders in dialogue. there is also a need for permaculture practitioners to go beyond. In a way, we realize that permaculture is very much organized according to a tradition of the permaculture design certificate. Universities are very much organized, especially in Europe, through the ECTS, the European Credit Transfer System. And perhaps we need to be flexible in our way of organization. So in a way, this is a challenge both for academia and permaculture practitioners to acknowledge each other's way of organizing our knowledge, our new mindset, and charter the unknown future together. Next slide. So basically, to start concluding, these are some reflection points. We realize as universities the need for more region-specific research in permaculture. Someone was asking a question about South and North in the Q&A. Yes, we need this. Farmers are researchers. Universities have the potential to organize this research in particular ways and disseminate it. The whole permaculture principle that the problem is the solution. So a new way of thinking. We need to consider issues of design when it comes to ECTS, PDC, and also to do joint advocacy together. Because we think also that this project gave us an insight how people from different worlds can put their difference together, create synergies, and create something meaningful together. And finally, just to conclude, next slide, I would like to show you in practice how this project has been beneficial to our university. So basically, I just took a few quotes from the student assignments. And one student said, in my opinion, this is a huge acknowledgement. In many ways, I feel that today's humanity has an urgent need to reconnect to its roots. After doing the permaculture course, she said, it is not a question of reinventing the wheel, but of being humble enough to assimilate our ancestors' wisdom. Another student said, she reflected on what hooked her up, and she said, let's see what got me hooked up to permaculture. Apart from spending a lot of time as a child in the fields, surrounded by greenery, the idea of preserving and having lower impact on nature and moving from a corporate system offered the possibility of a new sustainable way of life. And finally, a student, on meeting her peers and on going to the field to think of design together, she said, wow, what a morning. I finally got the chance to meet some of my fellow peers and to view the proposed fields where we would be implementing our permaculture design. One aspect that came to my immediate attention was just how like-minded we are. And despite our broad range of backgrounds, I honestly felt that, like for a change, I was finally in my comfort zone. I think this is best explained by students, yeah? How this project bridged the gap between permaculture practitioners and universities. Thanks a lot.
Many thanks for that, Sensu. I really enjoyed those testimonies from your students. They were very inspiring. They clearly took a lot from the module and from the course. So just a quick reminder before we move to our next speaker that you can submit any questions you have via the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen for any of our speakers. So we'll now hear actually from a student. We'll hear from Mihai Prejma from the University of Agronomic Sciences and Veterinary Medicine of Bucharest on making small spaces productive. So Mihai, the floor is yours, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I will start from Sensu point and just say it again, what attracted me to permaculture was actually all the childhood, which I expand on my grandparents' property, and they was doing all the agriculture they do in a permaculture way. To start with myself, I'm a student on University of Agronomic Science of Bucharest in year 4. And I got in contact with that just because of the wish I had to learn more about agriculture. And I want to thank initially to all my teachers in university to give me the opportunity to present this small project we had ongoing on the university campus. Not only they give us all the support we needed, but as well they was day by day beside us. My presentation will be a bit different than my predecessors' speakers, because my presentation will be from a student point of view, and will not be so technical, so I have to apologize in advance if something will be not understood properly. When the small spaces become productive, this is the image. First slide is the image from inside the campus of the horticulture, and actually represents exactly the plot we used to have it. And this image could be found on the website of the website of the university as well. If we could go to the next slide, please. Here we try to plot out the geographical situation of the plot. And the main thing I want to point on that, it is that the university is located in central Bucharest in Romania, of course, inside, exactly in the middle of a big city, where pollution is a problem, where the air quality is a problem, where all mainly problem found in the cities, you could find them there as well. As well, next slide, if we can. As well, with the support of the management of Agronomic University of Bucharest, we've been allocated the plot where we could have a try to set up a small permaculture project. This plot of land is located inside the campus, beside the greenhouses, and was an unused piece of land. As I said earlier, that was exactly in the middle of Bucharest. What we tried to start with, and we have to thank to our teacher Viorica Lagunovski, and as well to our teacher Claudia Fabian, the persons who help us a lot with the design of the plot. We try to make smaller plots achievable with small parts in between the plots of 30 centimeters, and try to get the principal crops, secondary crops, the fill-up crops, and the protection crops kind of blending together. Next slide, please. On this slide, you could see what was the existing condition of the plot we had to work with. Was a very heavy compacted soil full of weeds. We did try to not disturb the soil too much, but just create enough room for the seedlings to get roots. And everything what was removed from the soil was mulched and incorporated in the ground. Minimum tools was required. We used forks to aerate the soil, and the rakes to create our pathways and access points. Next slide, please. We try to establish the crops, and we try to get as much as we can in a small amount of land. The principal cultivars in there was potatoes, tomatoes, cucumbers, but in the same time we tried to get some spices, some aromatic herbs, and as well some protection plant like the dragon head and the marigold, the chatagets. Hopefully we've done a good work, and hopefully that will be seen from the next slide. We start landscaping. The group of students will start landscaping, and we'll try to start doing all the planting. I have to mention here that all the seedlings was produced locally inside the university in the greenhouse we have, and that's thanks to the collection of our teachers, which help us with everything we need as well as seedling materials. We followed the design entirely, and mainly because we actually set the rows to follow up the sun to get the most of the lights we can from it. And in this way, we're going to interfere the less as possible into the plots themselves. Can we go to the next slide, please? This is another few more stages that happened in 2020-2021 season, when we just start having everything set up for this little project. And we was trying to learn and implement the same thing in the same time. Can we please go to the next slide? On those 4 pictures, we try to give you an inside-out idea about the monitoring we did and the take caring. The 4 pictures are actually 4 different stages of developing of the cultures. You can see on the first one is the initial stage when the seedlings just start to grow up. The single addition we've done in this project was the irrigation system. And this one was helping us a lot to keep the soil humid and how it should be to develop the plants properly. Can we go to the next slide, please? On these ones, we could see our bio-intensive garden. The urban one is growing nicely and is covering up the soil. We could see flowers, we could see strawberries, we could see cucumber, we could see the aromatic herbs as well. And more or less, that was the first time when we realized we're going to have success with our small project. Can we go to the next? On this one, we try to capture, actually, this is the point when we realize we have a healthy ecosystem. We start finding pollinators in our small gardens. We start finding predatory insects, and that means the prey is there as well, so the system is healthy and is working properly. On next slide, I think it is the same thing. Some more predatory insects. We have a ladybug, we have a dragonfly, and you could see already the ladybug is feeding on the aphids and the egg of it, and on the eggs of the flies. In the same time, I'm not trying to say the flies and everything is a pest, but they are part of the chain and they should be there, and that means is a solid and a successful ecosystem. Can we go to the next slide, please? As well, we found we had caterpillars on our culture, and we was not bothered at all. They was eating a leaf from here and there, and because in the same time we got loads of birds which was feeding with the caterpillars. And again, that was another point where we realized the ecosystem is working properly. Would you be able to go? This is the start of the harvest of the first year. And those pictures are taken by me, by my colleagues, by our teachers as well. And not only we start harvesting after a few months after planting, but the harvesting was going all the year around, and was something which make us joyful about everything. Can we go to next slide, please? Again, few more pictures of the strawberries, few more pictures of the herbs. It's exactly what I said earlier. Despite having small expectations on the start being a deserted piece of land inside the university, actually we get a good amount of harvesting, and the crops actually grow up pretty well in there. Can we go to next slide, please? Now, we're talking about the next year, which is 2021-2022, was last year. I like to believe we got a bit wiser last year, because most of us took part of the Erasmus Permamodule. We done it with Antoine, and that give us some more insights about the permaculture. Getting all these insights made us to use some more technologies, to use some more tricks and tips we learned in the module. And we start testing some new materials, which you could see on the next slide. Was a new motivation for the new year. We remove all the vegetation from the new year, and because another teacher from our university, Professor Adrian Petecilla, helped us with a chipper. We actually shredded all the vegetation and incorporated back in soil to keep all the good stuff in it. Would you please go to the next slide? As well, apart from that, we have using other new stuffs which we learned about in the permaculture model. This was wool to keep the moist down, was branches which was chipped down from the Permaculture department, was some branches from the Viticulture department which was chipped down and used it as a mulch, as well with sawdust from conifers to give a bit of health to the ground. Can we go to the next one? What we tried, because we believe that becomes a success, at least on our eyes, we try to make this project pretty visible to everyone. We got this help from some local televisions. We've done this through the social media channels. We've done this through the university site. And actually, everything else went in place pretty well. That means at least from my point of view, this small project was becoming a success locally. Again, you have here some slides from different televisions. On the first one, it's actually saying there's some test for a bio-intensive garden in the urban landscapes. Was presented pretty well. Hopefully our message was reaching other years and other people interested in this subject. We could take as an example, even if we are such a small scale. Can we go to the next slide? On 2021, because of the measures we put in place and because of new tricks we learned at the permaculture model, the harvest was a good one as well and was actually better than the previous year. As well, a few more pictures from the garden during 2021. And again, which I believe is show us the health of the system and of the ecosystem. Everything was in place properly, and everything from the chain was present there, from predatory to prey to bigger prey, and the results of the project. Next slide. This is the end of last year's season. We're getting closer to the end of the last year's season. As you can see, the garden is trying to push the boundary of what we have there. And on the next slide will be even visible. Yeah, the spinach was invaded the whole of the garden and was trying to go over the boundary of the garden, which for us came as a very nice thing to happen, because definitely that's a solid system implemented properly. Yeah, that's exactly the end of the next season, and the picture taken by our teacher Claudia couldn't make more right to it. Hopefully, having such a small project and implemented right, hopefully that will open the eyes for different people in different places. And because a small scale was implemented in Bucharest with no problem, that means that's achievable everywhere. So if anyone wants to join it, it's not that hard to do it. You just need a bit of willing, bit of passion, bit of soul, and the things will go in place. Thank you for your time, and hope I was up to your expectations.
Thank you very much for sharing that story with us. I'm quite sure I've always been told that good things come in small packages, and I think your project nicely demonstrates that. Now, last but certainly not least, we'll hear from Pascal Paulus from the University of Liège about teaching the Perma-Module. But before I do, I'll just remind you to keep your questions coming in, because we will move to a short Q&A session after we hear from Pascal. So Pascal, the floor is yours.
Hello everyone, so I am Pascal Paulus. I will be sharing our experience in teaching the Perma-Module at our university, which is located in Belgium, more specifically in Wallonia, and it's called the University of Liège. So practically, in practice, to set a little bit the details, the practical details, we launched the module early 2020, so it was 2021. I'm sorry, it's a mistake in my slide. Early 2021. So we started in February to teach the module at the university. So we had one semester from early February to the end of May, and the students were evaluated partly on projects and partly on an exam, and we wanted to put really the accent on the project side of the course, because it's by doing that the students learn the best, by applying what they see in the course. So we wanted really to insist on the importance of the projects. So we had a few theoretical sessions of 3 hours, and then we had four full practical days, which included some visits of farms which apply some permaculture principles or techniques, or which used some design techniques to implement themselves. So there were those field visits, and sometimes we were able to work manually on those farms themselves. So it was really nice, because the farmer took some of his time to show us around, and then afterwards we helped weeding some stuff. We helped planting small plants around in their vegetable gardens. So on this side, we also had to help the students with their projects. We also organized design sessions with an experienced designer. We asked him to kind of accompany the students in their creative process of designing projects. The students had 2 design projects, so one individual design project and another group project. And their individual project, they were able to choose which project they wanted to implement on which field. And for the group project, we gave them one specific field located on the campus on our research center, and they had to design a permaculture project, but with given indications of. I will give some examples later in the course. You can go to the next slide. So in my title, there was mention of holistic thinking, and I think today we also mentioned quite a few times the term holistic thinking. Thank you very much to the other members of the consortium. So why is holistic thinking linked to permaculture? I will be very quick on it, but permaculture is actually an holistic system design approach. So it's obvious that holistic thinking is intrinsically linked to permaculture. So it's important when starting a project to consider all aspects. You have the economical, ecological, the cultural, you also have the social aspects, you also have all kinds of agronomical aspects that you have to take into account. And this requires actually to have a lot of tools in your pockets. And I don't know if you guys had some university course at some point in your curriculum, but sometimes when you are a student, you don't have many tools yet in your pockets. Yeah, so I put here the definition of holistic in order for it to be clear. So it's holistic is about interdependence of parts and not separating parts. So one could actually, you can go to the next slide, please. So one could actually expect that a university with many bachelors and many studies, and you have all kinds of knowledge spread around, it could be a very fertile context for multidisciplinary project to arise and take place. However, as everybody knows, when you are in a curriculum, you become more and more experts in one field. You gain knowledge over one field, and then you become more and more experienced with only a very specific field of knowledge. And it's a bit to counter this tendency that the course of permaculture can be a big asset in the academic field. So our faculty of the ULiège, so I'm from the faculty of Jean Blum, which is the faculty of agronomic sciences. Our students, they learn about how to grow plants and what are the different type of agricultural contexts and agricultural practices, but they don't always learn how to increase the resilience and sustainability of food systems. And I think Nick Jacobs from IPES Food already talked a lot about sustainable food systems. So it's very critical to not only be able to grow food, but also to think through the way we grow food in order for it to be really truly sustainable on all aspects of life. So you can go to the next slide. So multidisciplinarity, that's actually what we try to spark in the students, actually. So they know a lot about agronomy, but it was the occasion, the opportunity for them to broaden their horizons. So in the course, I will go over a few things that could help actually broaden the horizons of the students. So there will be first the students themselves, the ethics and principles of permaculture, the visits and field work, and the design project. So you can go to the next slide. Thank you. So in our faculty, the course was facultative in the program of third-year students. So that means they are around 21 years old, and they finish their bachelor. So it's actually around that stage that they can take the course. Some students were not from the bachelor, but most of them were. So when you're in a bachelor, actually in Belgium at least, you're not yet really project oriented. You are still in the phase that you learn a lot of very fundamental knowledge. And so it's quite a switch to go from fundamental knowledge courses to project-oriented courses. So in our class, we had students from different backgrounds, actually. We had a few working people, some students that were older and that had more experience with real-life projects and stuff. And the fact that we had a diverse public, even though most of them were a third bachelor, as I said, it was really a big help to try and get their mind out of the typical academic context. And yes, as I said, they are from the agronomical faculty, so they know a lot already about agronomical science. Thank you. So now the ethics and principles of permaculture, you don't talk much about ethics in a typical agronomical engineering parkour, but it's important to put words on it, to put words on why do I make this choice? Is this choice really good and really sustainable for me, for my children, for my grandparents, for my neighbor? Is it also good for the planet and so on? And the fact that permaculture gives ethics and gives principles that come from these ethics, they kind of explicit a frame of thoughts that can help the students have a reference. Of course, everyone will interpret differently the ethics, and so it will give some differences between one student and the other, but it's still a common reference that helps actually to agree on some choices, and also to keep us from going to non-ethical choices. And it helps also to think the project and the elements of the project over the entire life cycle, which we don't always do here usually in projects. So you can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So we had some visits and file work, and it was amazing how the visits and the file work, I have to insist on that, were catalysts for the design project. It was they saw this and that, and at some visit, and they were like, yeah, we saw that, it was a good idea, we decided that it was a good idea inside our project. They had to say why, of course, but it was for them very inspiring to see stuff in real life, like not sitting in a big space with someone giving lessons with the PowerPoint like we do right now. And they got acquainted with tools and manual labor on the farm. Some of them had no farm background or not the occasion to have a garden. So it was important for them just to put their hands into the mud, and they were very happy about it. You can go to the next slide. So some pictures of the visits. I think I'm already out of time, so I'm going to switch further. So the design project, they stimulated different stuff in the students' minds. So for example, they had to consider different aspects of the project: water management, energy management. They had to convey ideas. They had to be creative and take into account budget and time constraints. And this year, which is really nice, we have a real life case, like real farmers that came with the project, and they're like, design for us. So that's really nice. So we can go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so those are elements helping the students to think globally and to understand the complexity in their project, but also in the world, which is very important. We can go also to the next slide. I have a few examples. You can go through it. So this one was, the project was to make a spot for bird photography. That was like a fictional project, but they had to make a spot for bird photography based on a real field. So it was a real field, but they had to think a fictional project on it. You can go to the next one. So this was a seed production facility. You can go to the next one. Sometimes they were very artistic about their project, which was funny. It looks like a drawing, but actually there was a lot of different layers on that project. But the final master plan was quite funny to see, actually. And I will give the floor to Marie, which was a student last year and did a project. This was her individual project. So it's she chose the field and she chose the project. Marie, go for it.
Yes, I hope that everyone can hear me. So the project I decided to work on was on an existing farm, but not in activity anymore, called Ferme Sainte-Anne. Its location, it's quite exceptional as it's located on a landscaped park, but less than 5 kilometers away from the city center of Liège in Belgium. It's situated on top of a hill with high exposure to winds, but with an amazing view at the same time to the city center and to the countryside. on that time, the farm was on sale and was the target of a real estate project. And a group of citizens was mobilized to fight against this project. So the goal of the design project for me was really to propose an alternative to the real estate project and a new life for the Ferme Sainte-Anne, and to do an agroecological microfarm in diversified market, using animal traction with two main objectives. You can go on the next slide, please. Yes, thank you. So the two main objectives, the first one was to produce healthy and local food, at the same time vegetables, berries, and fruits, and to integrate the farm into its environment, and to regenerate also the soil that was a bit damaged due to intensive farming practices. The second objective was also educative, and to educate and raising awareness among the citizens about ecological food production and nature, and mainly so to connect the urban citizen to this kind of way of life. You can go, yeah. So I started with the observation of the land. So as you could see on the first slide, the farm was on different lands, and in total it was around 2.5 hectares. And the main observation were that it was on wind exposure, mainly south and southwest winds, and located on the highest hill of the surrounding, without edges, except a really small one, and without trees, also except some, but isolated ones. As a resource, I found that the soil, even if it was a bit eroded, was a loam soil, so quite good for farming, and a land with a really slight slope, with already a quite big pond that we can see the blue cycle in the middle of the map. And there were already the farmhouse with a huge surface for collect rainwater, which was really an advantage due to increasing drought and with global warming. So for the design, I really started after the observation to challenge the limiting factors I identified as the wind exposure, but also the access to water. And then to address the zoning phase by identifying the main core activities of the project, and after that, the secondary ones. Then, based on the objectives of the project, I also did a list of all the elements I needed in the project. And with all these elements, I really identified the needs, the output, and the possible interactions between each other. And then I wrote all those elements on small piece of paper, and I really played with them to put them and to see on the map where they could fit best. So you can go on the next one. And I also worked on the different floors. So you could see here on the slide in blue, the water flows. We can see it's really small, sorry for that, but we can see that from the roof, there are two points for collecting waters. And then all this water go on one side to the pond, and then to the surplus could go to a smaller one at the near down the field. And I also worked on the organic matter flows to see where to put the elements, and like the compost, for example. We can go to the next slide. Yes, and here you have the map with the different zones. So we can see in red the zone 0 with which is really the heart of the farm, with the farmhouse, but also the restaurant that will take place, and also the transformation zone for the restaurant. And after that, we have the tunnel, the greenhouse in orange, and in yellow, it's all the gardening plots, which are all the same size to try to uniformize the work and to make it easier also to do the animal traction. And on zone 3, then it's a zone for perennial crops, so we have to go less often on this kind of zone. And the same for the orchard, which is in the zone 3 also. So basically that was the project, and located near the pond, there is also, so it's in zone 2, educational garden with a mandala garden, so really for the educational activities. So that's pretty much what I wanted to share with you. There would be many more things, but I think we also ran out of time, so I hand it over to Pascal.
Thank you, Marie. I will just finish with a few closing words. So she did a great job on that project. So I got, after one semester, we got some feedback from the teaching. And yeah, I had some self-reflection, self-reflecting questions after the exams, like, why didn't the students understand it, and what would I not have enjoyed as a student, what part of the course, and yeah, getting some feedback from students was also very insightful. And I saw that the students were the most on the receiving end when they were on the field. It was amazing how much they learned really elsewhere than in the class, and giving the assignment earlier. And we can go to the take-home message, please, Lena. Thank you. So from this presentation, I'd like just to keep a few points. First, the fact that thinking holistically, learning how to think systemically is a really valuable asset in the curriculum of students. Having ethics as reference, as we saw, is great for making decisions. We need to be holistic to be sustainable, find work, as I said already a few times. And yeah, it was amazing to see the students getting invested, like personally. Some students took the assignment really at heart, and they went to see people, experts, and they contacted some people to really achieve the assignment. And that was an amazing part of teaching this course, is seeing the students really having fun doing their project. Yeah, it's still a course, they have an exam and stuff, but they still kind of had some fun at some point, so it's really nice. It was not perfect on the first try, but as we have a principle in permaculture that says accept and implement feedback, so that's what we are doing right now. So thank you very much for your attention, and I will leave the floor for the question and answers, I guess.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you for those presentations. Very interesting insights. We do have around about 5 minutes for a quick Q&A. So we have a couple of questions coming in here. I have one question here for Dr. Sensu. So the question is about, as education on sustainability is mainly directed towards youth that is likely to make a difference in 10 years from now, how and to what extent can the older generation be educated on sustainability? So that one's for you, Sensu.
I mean, what I can say is that in our case, as a university, we have the possibility to open our courses not only to registered students, but actually to open them to the community. And in fact, both in last year's cohort and in this year's cohort, we had a core of students coming from the Faculty of Education, from the Faculty of Agricultural Sciences, but also a number of what we call visiting students. And actually, these have been coming from the general public who have an interest in permaculture and to learn about permaculture. So I'm sure that other universities can also consider this model. because as I said, university is also about engagement and service to the community.
That's really encouraging to hear that there were also other people from the community coming in for the course. That's great. Thank you. I have a question here for Mihai. So the question is, as a permaculture student, what do you consider to be the main outcomes of the Perma-Module project on students' approach to sustainability practices? Mihai, perhaps you could answer that one for us. Is he still here? Mihai? Perhaps not. Perhaps Marie, would you be happy to answer that question for us about what you consider to be the main outcomes of the Perma-Module project on students' approach?
Yeah, I can try. For me, I think, as Pascal already said, it was also the opportunity to work on a project we could choose, but also on a real project, and to exercise and to put into practice what we learned during the Perma-Module. Yeah, it was really interesting, and I think that's the best way we could learn, and really to experiment this holistic thinking also, because when we have the classes and the module, of course it's interesting, but then when we work on the project, it's really the time where we really understand the meaning of thinking holistically, and to put all the elements together and to think, okay, this there is this interconnection, interrelation, and that was the main interesting. And also I think the field visit, that we could really see in real life what a permaculture project could look like. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that answer, Marie. And I'll take one more question. I have a question here for Pascal. I think you kind of already answered this, but maybe you can just summarize it. So the question is, how has the undergraduate course been welcomed by students and professors in the university? And has the general interest towards the course changed since the implementation of the project? That one's for you, Pascal.
Yeah, it's it's hard to tell, actually, because it depends actually on how much communication you do around the course. But I had the occasion to talk with a student, and she said, I recommend the course to everyone I talked to. So I thought that was a very nice feedback from students. And but I have to say, in agronomical faculties, actually our agronomical faculty, sometimes permaculture still has this stereotype of being like for gardeners and stuff, and that's kind of a gap to bridge, and that we are in the process of bridging. But you still need to have some projects, some students coming, some more interaction with other professors. But I think Educator here he made some great interaction between the different professors at their university, and so maybe he has some more input on that question. But what I noticed is also a lot of interest from people outside the university. That was even more like very interesting to see the people from the permaculture world and not from the permaculture world, like buzzing around the course. It's just really nice. It's really nice. Maybe Edu can add something on that if he's still there.
Yes, thanks, Pascal. What was quite fascinating about the Perma-Module course at the University of Catania is that most of the lecturers are specialists. So they've been teaching the same type of subjects for many, many years. And suddenly along comes this holistic permaculture course that started connecting the dots among them, and also raised their style of teaching, because they did a bit of research. They saw where permaculture plugged in. And I think now we started connecting students, as Paolo was saying in his slide, that from specialist skills, they now develop generalist skills, and we call those T-shaped skills. So a permaculture student is actually more able to look at the bigger picture and solve complex problems. So we're really equipping these students to come out of university with a brain that functions on their head, not like waiting for 10 years experience, if they're lucky, to get enough whole systems thinking. So we're plugging that in within the permaculture module, because permaculture is whole systems thinking, which is at a master's level at any university. It's level 4. And this is what permaculture is able to do. So thanks for this opportunity for explaining this.
Many thanks for that. And I think a very positive note to leave this conference on today, because unfortunately we are out of time. So let me just thank all of our speakers today for this very interesting discussion on this important topic. I will now pass the floor back to SAFE's Antoine and also Floriana for some closing remarks. So I'll go to you first, Antoine. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Natasha. Thank you, everybody, for all your contributions today. So there are more questions on the chat and in the Q&A. We will be happy to answer them in writing later if you still have questions. You can still find us on SAFE's website. Just want to finish by praising our Perma-Module again. I think it really showed how students can compare and contrast different consumption and production choices and promote and propose responsible choices. That's really great to have been able to listen from university students and their lecturers today. So it's really insightful. Thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you, Antoine. And let me pass the floor back to Floriana for your closing remarks.
Thank you, Natasha. I would like just to say that I think the interest from students is there, the interest for university is there. We've been how this module could be successful in many universities, and we would like really to continue this. I would like to thank so much University of Liège, of Malta, of Catania, of Bucharest, the Institute of Permaculture of Romania, and l'Accademia Italiana di Permacultura, that have been those, together with SAFE, have created the whole project of the Perma-Module, and really to continue to disseminate, not only in the 5-6 more new countries that they contact us, but it's much more country, because to train young generation, future people who will work in this area, it's key for a healthy environment and healthy food. So I really hope that all the effort we have done in those 2 years and a half, that will be used from university who help us to doing it, the new university who signed the memorandum, for much more university. I've seen already in the chat, some university in Portugal were already interested in Spain. So we're very glad of this, because this is what really we want to do. We have done awful a lot of work, and now it's finished, it's done, the module is there. More university will use it, more successful will be the program. And of course, the fact of having very high level professor at university, fantastic people at the 2 institutes, the Italian and Romanian one, who have the practical experience, make this project successful. So my wish is that in few years, in 2-3 years, will be in many universities. It would be great, the 27 universities all over the EU, but it's really what we are dreaming of. Thank you. Thanks all of you, all the speakers, to be here with us, and all the people who are participating till now to this conference. And thank you, Natasha, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Floriana. And of course, thank you to our speakers and the audience that have been following along today. So just to say that this event was recorded. So if you do want to relive the fun all again, you can do after the event. And otherwise, yeah, I'm Natasha Foote. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you have a great evening.